Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our November meeting for the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee. All right, we will get started with our land acknowledgement. Niagara region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land, and this land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Thank you. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest tonight? That's a no. So we'll move on to the agenda. We've all had a chance to review the agenda, so I will put forward a resolution here. Resolved that the October 27th, 2025 Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee agenda be approved. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kristangi. And the seconder, and that will be our Brian. All in favor? Fantastic, that's carried. And we're just going to be going back and forth with that all night. Awesome. Okay, moving on then to the minutes. Okay, so the minutes went out. Receipt of previous minutes. I have a resolution here. Resolved that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of September 9th, 2025 be received. A mover. We'll go with Brian. And seconded by Councillor Kristangi. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our verbal update tonight. We have Bianca to speak of the Heritage Grant Selection Committee appointment. Go ahead, Bianca.
Thank you, through you, the chair. So this verbal update is on the Grant Selection Committee. Couple of meetings back, we passed a resolution to make a couple adjustments to the program, but that we were going to continue with the format that we had. So following that, we launched the grant again. We're still in an intake period, but in order to prep for it, we want to make sure that the selection committee, we're either going to continue with the one we have or if we want to reappoint new members. But both of the members that are currently on the committee are not here. So I think what we'll do is, right now it's Councillor DeFlavio and Amy on the selection committee. I don't know if they have any concerns with it. So maybe what we'll do instead is I'll follow up with an email after the meeting, see if there's any concerns. If any are raised, then we'll bring it to the next meeting and make the adjustment. But that's essentially what the update's for. And then I believe grants next Friday, they close? Yes. Yeah. So the grants close next Friday, the 7th. So just a reminder to property owners to get the applications in. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bianca, for that update. And yes, for heritage property owners in Grimsby, definitely get your applications for the grant program. It's a great opportunity to improve and maintain your beautiful historic homes. Okay, we have a resolution here. Resolved that the Heritage Grant Selection Committee appointment be received. But is it received? The update be received? Is that?
Yes, update.
Okay. I'm going to say that again. Okay, so I have a new resolution. Resolved that the Heritage Grant Selection Committee appointment update be received. A mover. Kristangi, and seconded by Brian. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I look forward to that further update, Bianca. All right, we'll move on to a memorandum for the ERO posting. Bianca is going to speak on the new proposed regulation under the Ontario Heritage Act regarding the archaeology exemption criteria. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, the chair. I did provide a memo. In the memo, I kind of shared with you the feedback that we had received from the ministry. So essentially, they were saying that with Bill 5, the recent amendment, they were proposing criteria for the archaeology. So this is now then bringing forward what that criteria is going to look like. So we continue, like we mentioned in the previous staff recommendation, we're not archaeologists, so we defer to the specialists to determine if this criteria is appropriate or not to ensure the preservation of those important assets. And basically right now, the way it works, when we have a development application and we request a stage 1 to 2 or whatever stage archaeological assessment, we require that the ministry clearance letter be provided. So the only thing that we've noted in here is that we're going to update our development process to take this into consideration. So if they're not giving us that ministry clearance letter, we'll need to know why, and that if it's coming for the exemption criteria, whatever that looks like, we're just going to add that into our development process. So really the way it affects the town is we're just going to adjust our internal processes to ensure that this important requirement is still met. But as for the criteria, we leave that to the specialists to provide comment on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. Are there any questions from the committee on that? Yes.
Through you, Chair. So with this, is there I'm just trying to think if there's still merit to having, like, do we make a recommendation to council to pursue an opinion from archaeologists to comment on that? I appreciate that this is in your area of expertise and you deferred it, but I'm just wondering if, like, because this does have potential to impact heritage, should we make a recommendation that there should be some opinion pursued, so there potentially could be feedback given around the regulation and maybe shape some elements of it if there is something that we feel like we could, have some influence on, and who knows, maybe it's something we even pooled some other municipalities on. Just a thought.
Through the chair, so I know part of the consultation process, they are supposed to be engaging with the archaeologists and also the Indigenous communities that are involved with this. So that work is supposed to be done by the ministry. And then I know additional feedback gets submitted by archaeologists and different specialists. We don't have that specialty in-house. There may be other municipalities that do have it in-house that are providing it. It's just such a small intake period that they give us that we would have just been able to give you comments when this came out in time for it to get approved by council for us to submit something. So there's not like a lot of time for us to go out and get an archaeologist to provide comments. But as for the impacts to Grimsby, we're confident that those can be mitigated depending on what we get back. And that due diligence period with the Indigenous communities and the archaeologists, that's something that ultimately should be conducted by the province. And then additional people I know in the field do submit that feedback that are in those specialized areas, just like we do when it affects us in heritage planning. It might not affect an archaeologist at that time, so you kind of lean on the different specialists to submit comments at that time. But that's just some feedback. I think that may be something we could have considered. It's just the timing. I don't know if we'd be able to swing that in order to get it back to us, kind of thing.
Thanks for your question, Brian. And does that satisfy your questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bianca. Are there any other questions from the committee on this? Okay. Okay, well, thank you for providing that memorandum and updating us on these changes to the OHA. My resolution here states, resolved that the memorandum, ERO posting proposed regulation under the Ontario Heritage Act, archaeology exemption criteria be received. A mover. We have Councillor Kristangi, and a seconder, we'll have Brian. All in favor? That's great, and that's carried. I will say this is nicer for my neck. I don't have to turn side to side as much. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the reports tonight. We have 5 to go through, and our first will be a heritage permit application for 2 5th Street, and Garrett will be presenting this. So go ahead when you're ready, Garrett.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 2 5th Street, known as Ilfracombe Lodge, is a designated heritage property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It is located within the historic Grimsby Beach area and the property occupies a lakefront lot on the west side of 5th Street. Previous heritage permit approvals in 2024 and at our last meeting in September authorized exterior alterations, structural stabilization, and restoration works, as well as the addition of a mudroom on the first floor and bathroom on the second floor. The applicants have submitted a new heritage permit application to construct an auxiliary dwelling unit to the west of the garage and a single-car garage to the west of the historic dwelling and a single-car garage to the south of the heritage building. So you can see them up on the screen there. Staff are supportive of the proposal, noting that the addition is subordinate in scale and visually distinct from the original 1880s cottage, and that it was designed sensitively with complementary materials and roof lines to complement the historic cottage. And staff also wanted to note that it's included in the report, but the new construction and the old construction will only be joined by the mudroom addition that came to the committee last month. So not a lot of the original material on the original cottage will be covered up by this application as well. Staff are also proposing that the materials on the cottage are in a contrasting color of the original cottage, and we've included that as a recommendation. So we're recommending that the permit be approved with the following conditions: that the conservation plan be updated to include the new proposed works and the connection details to the heritage structure, completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that the exterior cladding of the new addition be in a contrasting material and color to the original exterior cladding on the original cottage, and that the approval of any minor changes to the proposed restoration and renovation of the cottage be reflected in the conservation plan and delegated to staff for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett, for... Is there a... Oh, thank you, Garrett, for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. The three conditions that are there, have they been discussed with the owners? Are they okay with it?
Through you, Chair. The conditions fit within the proposal, so they have proposed using contrasting materials. The initial heritage permit application from the fall of 2024 did include the auxiliary dwelling unit. That just wasn't a part of their last heritage permit application, so they're seeking that approval now. But that conservation plan at the time didn't include the connection details between the new and old construction, so staff are asking to see that as well. And we have relayed that to the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. On condition C, it says the approval of any minor changes to be proposed restoration or renovation of the cottage be reflected in the conservation plan. Is minor changes defined? Like, is that clear with them about what would constitute that, and where the kind of the threshold of what is minor versus what maybe doesn't even get on the radar with them?
Through the chair, I think there's just another part in the resolution. It says delegated to staff, so I think staff would be the ones to determine if it's minor or not. I give the example of like 25th Street, not 25th Street, 35 Victoria Terrace, for example. So they had like a rear addition, and we had put in there, like, in the event that there's additional rot or something like that, that'd be delegated to staff, so the project didn't fall off the rails or like delayed. And so what happened was, when they uncovered some of the drywall in there, the way that they had insulated the building, they didn't put in an air gap. So basically they had like soaking wet insulation on these walls. So when it was all rotted. So then we worked with them on a compatible design so that they didn't have to come back here, and ended up being like one or two walls, I think. But in the grand scheme of the renovation, it was a minor change because it was still in keeping. And with 2 Fifth Street, it's been interesting to see, like, as they're uncovering, they don't really know what's there. So as they find more, slight adjustments have to be made. And so I think when we think it's still in keeping with the original intent, which is the preservation of as much material as possible, while still being consistent with best practices and things like that, as long as it's not a minor change, I think that we can manage like the impacts to the site. If like original French porch was coming down, I think that would be a different discussion. Where if it's like a portion, maybe a couple columns are failing, but we can still achieve the look, and we say go ahead and replace those columns. That's typically the mindset we're having. But like, I think we know where that threshold is. When it gets too much, it's like, no, we want to come back. We want the opinion of the committee. So this is mostly just so that this project doesn't get stopped because winter's coming. But yeah, I'm thinking like if they're putting the additional dwelling unit affixing it to the house, and say when they go to do that portion, there's like part of the siding is rotted or part of the floor system is rotted, we're going to say go ahead and replace that rather than having to come back. So that's kind of like a minor change that way. I can't think of anything that would be too massive at this point based on the fact that, you know, they're at the stage where most of it has been determined the condition wise. And I also wanted to mention the reason why there's been so many heritage permits coming for the site is because the first one we wanted to get out because it was for stabilization, and they didn't want to delay the restoration of the cottage by doing the dwelling unit. So as plans have been getting ready, we were bringing it back. So that's why a little bit piecemeal, but the idea is we wanted to keep the building standing. We wanted to be able to keep the integrity of the building as the warmer or the colder weather comes. So that's just some flexibility in the plan, but staff would have to approve any of that work. They can't just go ahead and do it. And the plan has to be submitted to us with the actual roadmap of what they're doing. So if that, hopefully that gives you a little peace of mind. And the intent is just minor things. But if it's a large thing that could really affect the cultural heritage of the site, we would bring it back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarifying question, Brian, and for your clarification, Bianca. And I'm glad that those questions were asked and that you shared that, because that's kind of, I was kind of thinking with all of these permits that are coming through, I was wondering if we were starting to lose sight of the conservation in the end. So I'm glad that that those conversations have been addressed. Okay, let me just go back and see if I have any other questions. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. All of my questions have been answered also, so thank you. Is there any other questions from the committee?
Maybe if I could just...
Yes, Bianca, if you want to add some more, let's go ahead.
I was just going to add one more point, what you were saying there about the vision. And I think this is the first plan that we did see included the accessory dwelling unit. And we were really supportive of it being kind of like you said, like the vision of the site, because we thought, you know, if someone's going to put an additional dwelling unit, it should be the person who's involved with the overall restoration of the building. So there's been a lot of care in making sure that there's no impacts to the heritage. So I think that's kind of why we had that like initial vision, but we've been doing that kind of step by step. But that's another reason why we really were like supportive of them going forward with the ADU, because we were like, this will be done at the right time while the whole site's being taken into consideration. So I just wanted to add that, just adds to the like overall cohesiveness and the plan for the site.
Oh, thank you for adding that too. And I also understand that the ADU is important for kind of offsetting the costs of the conservation work also. So I think this is again, one of those great heritage conservation stories where we're able to preserve the original asset and then also create something that allows that asset to have an active future and like a viable future. So I think this, so I appreciate again Brian's questions and then your ability to provide that clarification. If there's no other comments or questions from the committee on this, all right, I'm going to move forward with the resolution here. It's a bit long. Resolved that report HR 2522, Heritage Permit Application for 2 Fifth Street, dated October 27, 2025, be received, and that the committee recommends that the Heritage Permit for 2 Fifth Street be recommended for approval subject to the following terms and conditions. That the conservation plan be updated to include the new proposed works and connection details to the heritage structure, completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that the exterior cladding of the new addition be in a contrasting material to the original exterior cladding on the original cottage, and that the approval of any minor changes to the proposed restoration and renovation of the cottage be reflected in the conservation plan and delegated to staff for approval. I'm looking for a mover. We have Councillor Cristangi, and a seconder, we'll have Brian. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move forward to our second report of the night. This is a demolition request for 447 Elizabeth Street, and Garrett will provide this report.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 447 Elizabeth Street, known as the Elizabeth Street Pump House, was designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act on August 21st, 2000. The property was designated because of its use as a 20th century municipal waterworks facility. During the July 22nd, 2025 Heritage Advisory meeting, staff brought forward a heritage permit. The obtained approvals were for demolition of the deteriorating water treatment center located on the designated lands. The town has submitted an additional heritage permit to demolish the modern garage located on the lands, as the building is no longer in use and does not contribute to the heritage character of the site. The garage can be seen on the screen there. It is constructed from concrete block with a flat asphalt and gravel roof on it, and it's currently vacant. You can see in the image on the right, the subject building is highlighted in yellow, and the designated building is just north of it, closer to the water. Staff find that the cultural significance of the property will not be impacted by the removal of the modern structure. During this review, no impacts were identified. Further, the removal of the building will allow for the introduction of more green space to the park, which will return the area back to its turn-of-the-century appearance. In summary, staff recommend that the demolition of the modern garage be recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Are there any questions from the committee on this one? All right, I don't have questions either. I think, again, you've stated pretty clearly that this is quite far away from the heritage asset. And it's exciting to see if they're going to be developing more park space and green space in the area. I think that's an asset for all of us. Okay, we'll move on to the resolution then, if there's no questions. Resolved that report HR 2523 Heritage Permit Application, the demolition of modern garage at 447 Elizabeth Street, dated October 27, 2025, be received, and that the demolition request for the modern garage at 447 Elizabeth Street be recommended for approval. I'm looking for a mover. We'll have Councillor Cristangi, and seconder, we'll have Brian. Awesome. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to another demolition request for tonight. This is for 21 Kerman Avenue, and Garrett will be presenting on this one as well. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 21 Kerman Avenue has been listed on the Municipal Heritage Register since 2008 for its age, architectural elements, and potential cultural heritage value. In August 2025, a building permit was issued to alter the property. While alterations to listed properties do not require council approval, demolition does. The permit was issued without heritage staff review due to a missed notification step. Internal procedures have since been updated to prevent similar occurrences. Heritage staff were not notified of the proposed alteration and partial demolition. The property owner had been working to integrate the remaining sections of the main floor into the final design of the project. Recently, however, the property owner has applied to obtain approval from council to demolish the remaining portions of the structure. In accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act, staff conducted a full evaluation under the Ontario Regulation 906 with input from the Grimsby Historical Society. It was found that the structure was originally constructed in 1906 by Hugh Cromwell Kelson and Susan Brown Keep. The building once displayed vernacular design characteristics and contributed to the historic Kerman Avenue streetscape. However, the partial demolition has resulted in significant loss of architectural integrity. While the property retains some associative and contextual value, notably its history as a local apiary and its connections to the parcels that were subdivided by the Pettit family off of a Main Street West property, these are not sufficient enough to support designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. In summary, following the thorough and exhaustive review, staff recommend that the property at 21 Kerman Avenue be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register, as the property does not strongly merit designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the removal of 21 Kerman Avenue from the Municipal Heritage Register include the following recommendations. That adaptive reuse be considered for the resource to avoid high-quality materials and cultural heritage from being removed from the subject lands, and that the dwelling at 21 Kerman Avenue be photo documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that in the event that full demolition does occur, efforts be made by the property owners to commemorate the associative history of the property through a plaque, and that in the event that full demolition does occur, viable materials be salvaged to the greatest extent possible, including the exterior masonry and sandstone foundations to prevent high-quality materials from entering the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that report, Garrett. Any questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. I have a few, and excuse me because I'm going to probably bounce around a little bit, but just to start off around the whole process failure piece. So it says the building permit was issued, and the building permit itself, was that to take it from, you might throw the picture back up there? So the one on the left is what it looked like 2021, I think it said, and now the one on the right is what's left of it? And then I guess the question is, so what was that original permit for? Was it just to strip it back to what we see there?
Through the chair. So the first, or the only heritage, the only building permit that's been issued for the site was for a alteration, I guess, but it included extensive removal of original materials. So typically when a site is flagged as heritage, it would come directly to us to determine if demolition is occurring or not. So that's the typical process. So typically it would come in, go to the process of going to different agencies and things like that. And so usually this is flagged during the planning check, and unfortunately due to a staffing change, it wasn't caught. It was missed that it was a heritage site. So because of that, it was never passed down to us. So something we're looking at now is all alterations on all buildings will just be reviewed by us. Once we've determined it's not a heritage site, it could just move forward. If it is a heritage site, then it'll stay with us longer. But the original, or I shouldn't say original, the only building permit, just for clarification, there's only one, was to alter the building, and that alteration included removal of elements, but it wasn't caught, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for providing that clarification. And just to add a question to that, I'm sorry, Brian, but I just, so usually when these buildings are on the register, it's flagged through internal processes. This was unfortunately missed, but can you just remind us the process for for the homeowners too, because they put forth this application, obviously also not thinking about this being on the register. So maybe could you just remind us about the communications that are put towards the property owners regarding this, and is there a way to kind of, I don't know, put this in their ear? I'm not sure, but it's to remind us on that process, please.
Through the chair. So I think there's kind of different ways to look at this. If we're looking at this like whose liability was it that this wasn't caught, I think that's not the best discussion for this committee. Like in this scenario, that just my thought, because that is something we look at. But it is everybody's responsibility to make sure that we're following all applicable law when it comes to building permits. And so I'll just give you a background on how that works, just so you can understand how it's triggered. But I'm speaking of it independent of this application, if that makes sense. So when a building permit application comes in, part of the due diligence of the property owner is to check off if you're meeting all applicable law. So any legislation that would factor into the building code. So as a part of the building code, part 4 and part 5, which are designated buildings, they require council approval for alterations, demolitions. It's more of an extensive requirement. When it comes to section 27, the applicable law essentially says that you're in compliance with section 27 of the Heritage Act. Section 27 of the Heritage Act requires you to obtain council approval to demolish a heritage building. And so basically when we get these applications in, we're looking to see, has that threshold been kind of overtaken or overstepped, I guess, because the alteration is now turned into full demolition. And so typically best practice for us has been like additions being fully removed with roofs and walls, demolition. Those are different kind of categories we look at. So typically we look at the extent of it, and our recommendation usually to the property owners is this is kind of crossing a bit of a line between alteration, demolition. We recommend you go to council and get approval, and then we take them through that process. So that's typically how it's flagged. This hasn't happened before. Like since I've been with the town, they've always been flagged, and I've always worked with the property owners. Usually when they come in for their building permit, the first thing they'll do is talk to us if it's been flagged for heritage. So that's essentially what we're going to do now when it comes to any application coming in. It's just getting its independent heritage check right off the bat. If you don't have anything, then you're good to go. But if you do, I would typically have this conversation with them and say, you're kind of crossing the line between alteration and demolition. I recommend you go to council and get approval for that. And then we typically work with them. So that's typically what we do here at the town. So we haven't had this happen to us where a building permit's come in and this has kind of happened. But some of the things we're also looking at is guides and things like that for the property owners. And so that is something we could have for the guide. Just a reminder, when you're making alterations, double check that additional approvals, if additional approval is required. I mean, that's something we could send to all of the heritage sites because it applies to both of them. But yeah, that's something we want to continue to help is the communication, make sure that property owners are aware. And so we did run into this a couple of times with some of the designated sites with minor alterations. So in these guides, we kind of want to put it in there nice and clear so that they know, call us, we're here to help you. Just let us know if you want to know if something's been triggered. So we're using it as an opportunity for us to improve. And so that's kind of my thought. It hasn't happened before. It's kind of scary. So it's like, what can we do to make this better? But that's typically how they're notified through that process. They come in and inquire at the counter, and we tell them when they're coming in the early stages, just like when they get their zoning and they know how big it can be and things like that.
Okay, yes, thank you. And sorry, I didn't mean to take over your question, Brian, but thank you for providing that clarification and kind of giving a broader understanding of the town's role, but and also the community member or the property owners' roles as well. And I'm glad to hear that kind of, unfortunately this had to happen, but now we can learn from it and kind of improve our communications with the property owners. Okay, Brian, I know I took over, so go ahead and go back to your questions.
Through you, Chair, thanks. the permit that was issued initially. So like basically you see, it goes from that, which I mean, to look at the two pictures side by side is just shocking to see those ones. So you get a permit to alter it, if you want to call it alter it, like just it's stripped down there, and then eventually gets demolished. Like, what did the original alteration state they were going to do? They were going to strip it back of some materials and build it back up, when all it seems they did is kind of like a two-stage demolition. And I can't get away from that visual up there, because it looks like it was just partial demolition, then full demolition.
Through the chair, so I believe they were putting a second story on top. So they were intending to keep this floor, put the second floor on top, and then they had, I think they had some porches added. I can't even remember what the full design was, but the idea was get it to this stage, then build the new second floor up, and then add back on the porches or whatever it was. There was more like masonry being added in, but they were intending to use this portion of the building, or keep this portion, and then do the second floor. So that's why, like, if it had come to us, we would have flagged it right away. But yeah, it's an extensive alteration is essentially what they were proposing, and then rebuild it to, yeah. And I mean, it's not like, if you didn't know, if you're not trained to know, it's not like super obvious, because it is similar to what was. But we would have picked up on it right away, because those architectural elements that are integral to the building, I saw them gone as soon as I saw the proposal. So, but it's kind of similar, like, style, I guess. I mean, it's different, but essentially second floor and additions. Sorry, I don't have a photo of it.
Through you, Chair. So and I guess come back on the whole procedural piece, the gap here. Notwithstanding kind of what happened here with this, had that procedural issue that led to this getting past the town heritage staff, that has been if that hadn't been there, this would have been captured. You would have been able to weigh in on this. It wasn't like this method in the way that this went through, sort of like a two-stage, demolition. That was irregardless of the fact that the procedural issue had. So if the procedural issue was captured earlier on, you all would have been involved. You would have had to have approved the initial permit, and we wouldn't have been to this place here. Am I correct in that? I'm sorry if that was rambling.
Through the chair. No, that's perfect. I'll just reference 369 Park Road North, which we did recently. That was the one that had the dormer, and then they were going to put the two additions up. So that was one where original material was going to be removed, and I was like, you're kind of crossing the line between alteration, demolition. I recommend you just go and get it. So as a part of that process, they worked with us with what we thought would look good while maintaining the heritage of the property, but still allowing the space for the expanding family. And so they came through that process. We would have done the same thing here. And we may have tweaked the design or said, let's keep more of it. Like, that's something we would have had you guys weigh in on. And then council would have given them their approvals nice and clean, and everybody knows where the line is. So that's how we would have approached it had it gone the proper way, and how we'll approach it in the future.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. That makes sense there. Just moving through the report, in the conclusion section, it says staff have concluded that the resource does contain cultural value and has met the criteria for designation. However, based on the data obtained and lack of significant findings, the building does not merit designation. It reads it's a bit confusing when you read it initially, and I'm sure it's just my not understanding the language. I would just maybe, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but my thought on this was more so just if we maybe want to add a little more. And I think it might have to do with the fact that they're on two different pages. When you read that one page, you're like, oh, it says it is going to be designated. And then you read the next side and it's like, but it's not going to be designated. So just think for whatever record and assessment, we may want to add a bit more and explain that, because it seems confused. It almost seems like it does, but then it doesn't. And so we're not. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it that I'm just not reading into it. I don't know if you want to clarify at all.
Through the chair. I know you just said some things, so I'll get you to weigh in on that. But because sometimes, like, the question is, does it have associative value? And it's like, yes, but it's like they had an apiary on the site, for example, but that had, like, the actual apiary elements are all gone, and it wasn't directly linked with the house. So it's not like a ton, but it's still yes. Right. And so there was that one. And then there was another one that was a yes. So technically the Heritage Act says you need to meet 2 legislative criteria. So technically it meets the threshold. But due to lack of findings, we don't think that it's significant enough to designate. And I think maybe the right word is defensible. Is it defensible enough to take to an OLT hearing? Do we have enough to say that this is important to stand alone for its significance? So it does meet the threshold, but there's not a ton of backing to that yes, if that makes sense. So I think Garrett was saying the lack of findings comment is basically stating that there's not enough of it, but I like what you're saying. So I think in future, when we do these assessments, we'll make it clearer, and maybe we can add that, adjust that in the resolution. I'm not sure what it says, but we can adjust that. But that's kind of the notion behind it.
Through you, Chair. Your explanation makes total sense. Again, I think that was the piece that I was missing. Is that it does have some, but not enough to put a strong backing behind it. It makes total sense what you said there. I think it's just when I was reading it, I was like, it's kind of confusing.
I just wanted to kind of follow up with what Brian was saying. I did have a question about that too. Like, I do wonder that section, because how I interpreted it was like going through the 906 and the assessment that was made, it would have been more defensible if the alterations hadn't happened. So I do think it is important to like have the assessment that you have and kind of be objective from like before the alterations it would have, and now we're kind of dealing with an after effect situation, which is why the 906 looks the way it does and why we've come to the decision, or why you have recommended the decision that you have. So it might be worth kind of adding a little bit more context to that. Just again, I think with these reports, they have lives beyond once they're accepted and approved. And so I do think in the grand scheme of things, when we look back at these reports, it is important to be consistent so that, because a lot of what we see on the house before the alterations were made, those would definitely be strong reasons to designate for other homes that we have, right? So just consistency, I think, is important. So maybe I kind of, what Brian's saying, maybe we kind of emphasize or clarify that a little bit in the report. Councillor Christine G, I did see your hand go up if you wanted to jump in.
Thank you, through Chair. That's why I was just going to clarify, if the permit came to us as it should have, would the house have then been up and qualified for designation?
Through the chair, I think it would have been a very different discussion because we lost a lot of that contextual significance. And so I think that's some of the risk of the buildings being on the register and not being designated because they have that vulnerability. And I think we've kind of talked a bit about this, like if we look back at that property on Mountain Street where council was considering, do we keep the siding and the windows in? And it's like, as you chip away at those attributes, you're chipping away at value, and it's in the strength of that value. So if we had kept this and we have acknowledged that Kerman is an important corridor, that's a likely a criteria it would have met for contributing to the character of the area. 100%, that's something we would have considered. And so we did reference that in the chart, like prior to the demolition, we would have said it met this criteria. So you would have been looking at meeting upwards of like 4, opposed to now 2, but they're more weak. Where if we had something that, we had 2 that were a little more weak, but then we had 2 really strong contextual, it would be a different discussion. And I think Kerman, especially where we have those character homes, it is something that contributes to the overall. So I think we would have had a different discussion at that point. And I think we would have worked with the property owners with their proposal to still achieve what they want to achieve. Maybe their additions are just to the rear or whatever it is, to balance both. And so, it's unfortunate. I'm with you guys on that. Yeah.
And just to follow up, I understand that this happened, but I also am afraid that there might be a loophole there and that this happens again. So my concern would be, does everybody on the register know they're on the register? And do they understand that they have to get a heritage permit to any alteration? And then also, is it not chief building officer that decides what is a demolition and what is not a demolition? Like, because, I mean, that's a pretty hefty alteration. So it's really not up to the property owner on the register if this is an alteration or not, because is that not the chief building officer that determines what a demolition could be?
Through the chair, normally I do consult with the chief building official on something, if something is demolition or not. I think the tricky part is when you're doing demolition and reconstruction, it doesn't come in as a demolition permit. It comes in as an alteration permit. And so usually the extents of that demolition are determined through the heritage review. So if it wasn't flagged as a heritage site, that oversight wasn't on the site. So it's not technically a loophole. It was something that unfortunately happened. To close that gap, we're just looking at every permit now, and we're flagging if it. So basically, before it was like one dedicated person is looking at all the agencies to see who needs to comment. Now it's like we're getting an independent heritage review. So there's just additional review on it. This kind of works with our priorities as well, and something we were working towards because we have taken over archaeology. And so building permits don't require archaeology, but some of the proactive things that are happening within the industry is when someone has a building permit application in and they're in an area of potential, they aren't required to do an archaeological assessment, but if they find something, they do need to stop. And so we have been implementing a warning clause to go with all the building permits that are in the potential. So heritage staff would be checking all building permits for archaeology. So this is just an additional thing we'll be looking at, but it works with our work plan. And it was something we were working towards with the launch of our new cloud permit. So that's something we were going to be doing. This is just, again, more reason why we need to be doing it. But yes, that is something we work with the building department on. And it's that alteration and demolition are on one permit, so it doesn't easily get caught. Demos always get caught so easily, right? Because they're just independent. So if this had come in as just a demo, it would have been caught automatically. It's that like kind of middle ground. And then as for if it's full demolition or not, the Heritage Act, it doesn't have a definition. And that's why when it looks to me like it's getting between an alteration and a demolition, I always recommend to the homeowner, just go to council, keep it safe. And then everybody's on the same page. And we consult with the building permit. The building department and say, would you need a demo permit? If that was an own application, just that, then we can use that as justification. So it's kind of a complex, this one, and left vague in the Heritage Act. So we use best practices and we use available legislation that does define it to essentially use it that way.
Thank you, and thank you for the really considerate questions from the committee on this one. Are there any other questions or comments? The last kind of comment I have is coming to the recommendations that you have. C. So your recommendation C says, in the event that demolition does occur, that efforts be made by the property owners to commemorate the history with through a plaque. And I'm not sure what other committee members think, but I'm not entirely sure if that's fair, because the oversight came on behalf of staff. So I'm not sure if there's a way that we can maybe rejig that, and is that something that the town could possibly do instead, or are there other ways that the town could commemorate that associated value? It seems like the property owners weren't aware. And it would have changed. It might have, the outcomes would have been different. So a part of me wants to, I like the idea of a plaque or commemorating this in some way. I'm just not sure if the onus should be on the property owner or the staff. And I'm not sure if the committee has any comment on that.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I feel like it's kind of weird to have a plaque on a property that now doesn't have historical value. So to me, it just seems a little pointless. But you did trigger what I remember. Is there not a, if I'm thinking of the correct house, there's a marker, a cement marker in the front corner of the front yard. Is that the same property? And if that is the same property, it says it's like number 13 or something. And if it is, are we protecting that? Because I believe it's a lot number or something, if I'm thinking of the same property.
Sorry, losing my voice. Through the chair, Garrett's just going to look that up, but I was going to just speak to the plaque. So when it comes to the register, none of these are enforceable, these recommendations. They're just our kind of standard ones. So the standard thing we have been doing when we have allowed a building to come down is we've encouraged commemoration. That's what that plaque piece, there's no requirement for them to do it. So if you want to adjust it or take it out, we can. It's just, that's our standard kind of recommendation. So I've just added it in for consistency. I understand the situation, and there's no obligation on the property owner to actually do it. It's just, I think, best practice and something we can ask for, but we don't have any means to require it anyways. So. Through the chair, we have confirmed there is a marker on the property, or what appears to be from Google Maps. So I think we'll take it back, find out if it's on our property. If it's on our property, then we don't have to worry about it. If it's on their property, we can look at it, do some research on it, and see if that's something we would want to protect. That might be an option. We could look at like an R plan or something where you just put like the protection under that object, so it wouldn't apply to the rest of the site. But I see Councillor Cristanchi has a question.
Thank you, through your chair. I believe it has number 13 edged in it, and I believe that was originally lot 13, so it probably is an old, and it's just there, and I don't know how many of those actually still exist in the town, and since Kerman is one of the original, it might be worth saving for sure, depending on whose land it is.
That's a really great catch. Thank you, Councillor Cristangi, because that definitely has a lot of heritage value to it. I'm trying to... Can I see the resolution? Yes. We're just taking a look at the resolution right now. Okay, so after that delay, we were updating some of the resolution, but hearing what we're saying about the loss of, the historic, the building and the asset, but then also noting about the lot 13 marker that's there, I want to go back to the plaque idea, because what I'm thinking, hearing about Kerman being an important heritage corridor, there being a lot of intact heritage on the street, as well as, this marker, is it worth the town exploring a plaque for Kerman Avenue? And that could be something that we could recommend that staff kind of pursue, in place of suggesting that the property owner put a plaque on their own, which again is only a recommendation. We can't enforce that. So what does the committee think about having a larger plaque for the cultural heritage landscape of Kerman Avenue? Councillor Corsangi, you have your hand up.
Thank you, through Chair. I like that idea. I think the ones that we have sort of on Livingston, and they explain like the Electric Railroad was here and stuff like that, might be really nice on Kerman Avenue, because you have Nixon Hall, and because it was the makeshift hospital at one time, it is lot 13, you can see the lot marker, so that might be a better idea, and then that encompass, and that story could go in there. I think that's a great idea. I'd support that.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I think we're adding it to the recommendation. Oh, Brian has his hand up though, so go ahead, Brian.
Through you, Chair. I'm gonna depart from my usual approach to kind of agreeing with it, and I honestly disagree. And I'm disagreeing because when I read through it, it's almost like it's either a heritage property or it's not. And we're saying it shouldn't be designated, but then we're going to say we're going to commemorate it. And I think it almost draws attention to the fact that this property is now lost, which I think in some ways it's just sort of like it's lost. There was something that happened that caused it to be lost, and now it's going to be removed. And almost like drawing attention to it after the fact is like, well, what was there? Oh, it was a property. What happened to it? Oh, well, it was close to being designated, but it wasn't because it didn't meet this. But then it ultimately was demolished, and we have a plaque to commemorate it. So I get that's maybe just a bit different than I normally approach these things, but I'm kind of taking it all in. And it seems like if anything on these recommendations, we say it's not designated because it doesn't have enough significant value, and the recommendations are any remaining materials. Like the piece around the remaining materials, I think is valid, but like the photo documented piece, I mean, there's not really anything to photo document anymore. And there's like, it says the demolition, I mean, I thought that was pretty much a done deal there. So really it's a matter of just make sure that the materials get put to good use, and I hate to say it, but let's move on. It's lost. So sorry, I know it's not normally go along with the kind of consensus here, but that's just how I'm feeling on this one.
No, I agree. I think I see your hand, Christine, so I'm not sure if you want to say, but so what I'm suggesting is separate. I should have maybe made that a little bit more clear. I'm using this as an opportunity to, yes, say that this building is lost. That's unfortunate, but the idea of a plaque for the character of the street, what's still there, and like what Councillor Corsangi said, like the character of what once was on Livingston Avenue with the HG&B railway, like that railway also went through Kerman Avenue. So I think going back to the broader cultural heritage landscape of Kerman Avenue is what I'm proposing that we commemorate on a plaque. I think that kind of placemaking is also helpful for future kind of character of the street too, where I think the community will start to recognize the character and learn the character of the street and learn the history, and then potentially what happened might not happen again. I don't know if that kind of clarifies, because I agree. I think, and that's part of why I was a little bit wary of having property owners commemorate with a plaque when the house isn't there. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on the larger character of the street being commemorated. Councillor Corsangi also has her hand up.
Thank you, through Chair. So I took it as no plaque on the house, no plaque, because I agree, no plaque should be there. I was thinking what you meant was the little stands with the information thing. I don't know what they're called. something like that on Kerman Avenue that talks about the street and the history, but has nothing to do with that house really, but the whole street. So that's what I was thinking, that you're going to place one of those somewhere on Kerman so that you, okay.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, like an interpretive plaque that kind of stands on the sidewalk that people can read and looks at the street with like maps and photos and a little bit of history. Maybe we talk about the apiary that was once there. And I'm sorry if I didn't clarify what I was proposing, but that was more of the vision, was a broader celebration of the character of the street. This came about, this idea has come about because of what was proposed, so scrapping what was proposed and adding that instead.
Through you, Chair. I'm open to that. I'm probably just not understanding it properly, but I think what you're describing in the spirit of what you want to do, I agree with, and I'm open to that. It just maybe wasn't totally understanding it in the first place.
Thank you. Okay, so you're in the spirit of it as being understood. Okay. It's the plaque. So it's an interpretive panel. It's like a panel, like an exhibit panel. Like you see them like in Coronation Park. We have like a Grimsby Remembers there's one on Del Lord and there's one on Coronation Park. And it's like something that you read. I don't know. I think I'm too tired for this now. Am I the only one that goes around? Anyway, okay, I think Bianca has the resolution, so we can read the resolution, and if we feel good with the resolution, then we can pass it, and if not, then we can talk about it.
Through the chair, I have taken out the plaque one. Let's just maybe touch on the photo documented. So I think it's hard to see from the photos, but the entire main floor is an old concrete block. And I think there's some really interesting components of the construction. They've used like shims and stuff inside the concrete block to like level out the building. So the photo documentation is like for a learning opportunity, because like we wouldn't have known that was the structure unless we were in this situation. So I think, like from someone who's seen a lot of heritage building, I think it's pretty unique. And so I think we could learn a lot from it. So that's why the photos are in there. I'd like to go back with the property owner's support and just take some more detailed photos, just so that we have them to better understand how these buildings were constructed. But I think it's a unique one that more stories may come out about the building, and I think we might kick ourselves for not having some more really great photos of what the building looked like. It's pretty cool, and it's like an easy thing that staff can do, and then we will share it with the archives as well. So I'd recommend keeping that one in, but the plaque one I've taken out of this one, and then I drafted you that other one, having it completely be separated. And again, it's not that we're asking the property owner to do it, even though it's our mistake. It's just these are standard recommendations. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so I'm going to read this resolution. And if we have any comments, we can definitely discuss and rejig. So resolved that report HR 2524 demolition request for 21 Kerman Avenue be received, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the dwelling at 21 Kerman Avenue be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register following an exhaustive review and evaluation against the Ontario Regulation 906, as the dwelling does not defensively merit designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act following the loss of contributing value. That the removal of 21 Kerman Avenue from the Municipal Heritage Register be provided with the following recommendations. That the adaptive reuse to be considered for the resource to avoid high-quality materials and available cultural heritage being removed from the subject lands, and that the dwelling at 21 Kerman Avenue be photo documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives. That the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that that a commemorative plaque be created for Kerman Avenue to include the character of Kerman Avenue and the historic marker, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that staff bring forward the options for the committee to consider, and that in the event that full demolition does occur, viable materials be salvaged to the greatest extent possible, including the exterior masonry, sandstone foundations, to prevent high-quality materials from entering the landfill. Do I have how does that sound? That sounds good. Okay, we have a question. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Kristanji.
I'm just concerned about the marker because we don't know if it's on their property or our property. So is there some sort of protection to say they cannot get rid of, because if we're saying we're not designating, then everything on the property is pretty much fair game, right? But that marker, we don't know where it is. So I really want to make sure we protect that marker until we at least find out if it's on their property or our property at least too. So I feel like something should be written in there that can't be wrecked.
Through the chair, I was going to add, I think we need to take these completely separate. So let's pass that resolution without the plaque. And then I was going to add, the reason why we're saying like demolition be permitted, but then talking about adaptive reuse is because while this structure does not merit designation, it doesn't mean it doesn't merit adaptive reuse or reintegration. So I just wanted to like separate that, because just because we're saying that it be adaptive reuse or that it doesn't end up in the landfill, they're kind of separate subjects, because even if something can't meet the threshold, it might still be valuable and might still be good and usable. And so that's why we've kept adaptive reuse in there. They're totally different kind of items, okay? So I just want to clarify that, so just so it's not confusing why we're saying, yeah, but this guy's intending to demolish. We still want to encourage adaptive reuse if we can. And then salvage we always encourage. So I think those are good to stay in there without the plaque piece. And then I think, so past that one, independent of this resolution, and then do this one as a follow-up. That's something you created as a committee, kind of separate to the report, and I'll do that in the minutes. I'll add that based on the discussion of the significance of the site, we think a plaque is something that should be or the committee thinks that something should be considered, and then we'll have that be its own resolution. And then as for the marker, I don't think the register would necessarily protect it, because if that was removed, would that be demolition? Because alterations permitted, it's kind of, I don't know if it would extend to the stone. And that's kind of something that we've looked at for other different things, like a tree or something like that. I think notifying the property owner that that's on there and that there's interest in it is something we definitely need to do when we're meeting with them to talk about this. And then the part about designation of that stone, we'll first determine if it's ours or theirs. If it's ours, that's a different kind of discussion. You know, it's safe. But if it is theirs, there's just maybe like a heritage easement is what we consider, or something, and the town can have drafted up an R plan, which is basically, you know, a little piece of land where the stone stick is designated, and the only designated attribute is that stone. So we can talk to the property owner about that. But I don't think leaving this property on the register is going to protect the stone. It's kind of how I see it. So I think our best bet is go back to them. This has been approved, but we want to consider doing this with the stone. Like in my discussions with them, they love the street. They love, you know, the historic element of the town. I don't think they planned on it, you know, having to take down this portion. I think they wanted to keep this. So I could see them being open to it. So I think I'll take that back and ask them about it. But our plans are expensive, so I don't know if the property owner would be willing to have one drafted, or if that, you know, if this is something that's so important to the town, maybe we get that our plan drafted, and then we can go ahead and put an easement on the site, which, you know, is a consideration, or we could designate the stone. Easement's kind of nice because it's between the town and the property owner, and we don't have the same thresholds to uphold as we do with designation. So if we were to designate it, we'd need it to meet 2 of the criteria and things like that. We need defensibility if we can't prove it. Where the easement's kind of nice because this is a story that we have, and we're working with the property owner. So I think that that's the approach to go with the stone, and I think we will talk to them when we go and also do some more information on it. And then so maybe we'll add to this one here, and that that discussion be undertaken. So I'll work on drafting that, but I think that would probably be the best way to go about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, and we can definitely strengthen that in the resolution. Okay, so I am going to go back to the original resolution that we had, and I'm going to read it again. Resolved that report HR 2524 demolition request for 21 Kerman Avenue be received, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the dwelling at 21 Kerman Avenue be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register following exhaustive review and evaluation against the Ontario Regulation 906, as the dwelling does not defensively merit designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act following the loss of contributing value, that the removal of 21 Kerman Avenue from the Municipal Heritage Register be provided with the following recommendations. A, that adaptive reuse be considered for the resource to avoid high-quality materials and available cultural heritage being removed from the subject lands, and that the dwelling at 21 Kerman Avenue be photo documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that in the event that full demolition does occur, viable materials be salvaged to the greatest extent possible, including the exterior masonry, sandstone foundations, to prevent high-quality materials from entering the landfill. Do I have a mover? I have Brian. And seconder? Councillor Cristangi. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. And now we're just waiting on Bianca's furiously writing about the next resolution here, writing away.
If you guys want to direct us to consult the property owner, I don't think we need to do that, but see what they think.
Okay, I'm going to read it, and then if anyone has any comments before we go to the resolution here, or to move it. All right, so that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that a commemorative plaque be created for Kerman Avenue to include the character of Kerman Avenue, the historical marker, and that Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that staff bring forward the options for the committee to consider, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the history of the marker be investigated, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that a heritage easement under Part 4 designation be considered for easement or, that we recommend that a heritage easement or Part 4 designation be considered for the unique asset. How does that sound? That sounds good. Do you want me to read a part again?
Just the mark.
Okay, so I'll go back to the marker. So the resolution, as it states, says that we'll recommend that the history of the marker be investigated, and that will recommend that a heritage easement or Part 4 designation be considered for this unique asset. Okay, we got a couple nods, okay. I'm not sure if it's worth stating that we're recommending staff put forward the plaque also, or if it's clear enough with what you have. Like, is it clear that the staff would be doing the commemorative plaque and taking that?
It just sounds like a job.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry. Yes, it does make sense. Okay. All right. I'm going to read this one more time. Okay. So resolved that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that a commemorative plaque be created for Kerman Avenue to include the character of Kerman Avenue and the historic marker, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that staff bring forward the option for the plaque to the committee to consider, and the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the history of the marker be investigated, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that a heritage easement or Part 4 designation be considered for the unique asset. Do I have a mover? We have Councillor Cristangi and a seconder. We have Brian. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, that's great work. We are going to move forward to our fourth report of tonight. Bianca, your poor voice. Bianca is going to be providing a recommendation report for 133 Main Street East and amending the designation bylaw. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Through you, the chair. The property at 133 Main Street East, known as the James Willis and Grout Nels House, is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act and contains a circa 1865 Queen Anne style red brick building. The property went through a OLT case that resulted in the development being approved. And as a part of the development process, once all of that has been approved, they move into site plan. Site plan is delegated to staff, so this doesn't come forward. But as a part of the site plan, there's a site plan agreement. And in the site plan agreement, that's where we execute a lot of the things from the heritage permit or nuances that are highlighted by staff. So as a part of the site plan, we acknowledged that there was the regional right-of-way. You can see that highlighted in red on the screen there. So that's a road dedication that is a result of the development application. So that basically goes to the region and forms now part of Main Street East. So that portion is just going to become road and no longer be the properties in the property. So the designation would have extended into that sliver. And so the intent of this application is to essentially remove that sliver from the designation. So similar to how we talked about the R plan being underneath the marker, the developer will also provide us with an R plan for that area. And so we send that over to our lawyers, and then they amend the designation bylaw protections. But prior to doing that, we just have to adjust the bylaw to make sure that the legal description reflects the remnant lot. So once that happens, then the new bylaw is registered on the site. And so that red area will be effectively removed from the designation, but the rest of it will stay. And because that portion becomes road, the property still fronts onto Main Street, so it maintains its prominence along the historic corridor, and its historic ties and its contextual value are being preserved through this process. So Heritage staff have no concerns with this proposal. This is very technical in nature and something that's going to occur on probably a couple other sites that we have happening in the site where we have, or happening in the town where we have development and heritage on the same site. So this will be a technical process the committee will see in the future, but just to help you understand, that's kind of how the process works. And so we'll be essentially adjusting the bylaw to have a new legal description that reflects the remnant lot, and what's coming out is the red there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for presenting that report, Bianca. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? I'm not seeing any. And to me, it just sounds like the fact that we're doing these site plans means that the project's moving forward and that the property will be protected and conserved. So that's good. That's good news for the 133 Main Street East. Okay, if there's no questions or comments, I will go forward with the resolution. Resolve that recommendation report for HR 2525 for 133 Main Street East, amending designation bylaw be received, and that the committee recommends that the designation bylaw be updated to include the amended legal description. Do I have a mover? We have Councillor Cristangi and a seconder. We have Brian. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. All right, we have one more report tonight. Bianca is going to give a recommendation report on the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District and next steps. So go ahead, Bianca.
Thank you. Through you, the chair. The purpose of this report is to update the Heritage Committee and Council on Phase 2 of the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District study and to outline the next steps for protecting the historic corridor. The HCD project began in fall of 2021 with community engagement continuing into 2022. In 2023, we had extensive amendments to the Ontario Heritage Act, which essentially required us to reassess our study area and ensure defensibility. At this time, the other areas that weren't recommended were also assessed. The study was then updated and presented to Council in July of 2023. Council then directed staff to conduct additional consultation with property owners within the proposed district. From July to October 2024, staff met one-on-one with the property owners, and we were very happy to meet with 43 of the 58 stakeholders. They all participated with us, which we very much appreciated. Some came into town hall, some invited us into their homes. So we wanted to thank them for giving us that time. We really appreciated it. And those conversations really played a big part in our recommendations tonight. Just again, for context for everybody, of the stakeholders that we met with, was almost exactly split between the heritage buildings and the modern buildings. I think it was 22 and 21. So it was a good split between the two. And then 82% overall expressed support for some form of heritage protection. However, we did get kind of mixed feelings on if they preferred Part 4 or Part 5. And so in order to enable that assessment further, we prepared a SWOT analysis to look at both of the approaches. And based on our findings, staff recommend that through pursuing individual designation rather than the district, this will achieve the following. It'll build on the town's successful individual designation program. So I noted within the reports that since 2023, we've successfully designated 42 buildings. Of those, only 2 were appealed, and we did get both of those houses designated following the OLT. So one went through a full hearing, and they still recommended designation and agreed with council that it should be a protected building. And the other one ended up working with staff, and we came to a resolution, and the building was also designated. So all of those have been closed. We've successfully designated 42 buildings. We do have still some underway, but those ones are finished. And it's been a very successful experience, a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of great incentives and programs have come out of that, that we're now having more people actually reaching out to us. We've had 4 or 5 people reach out asking to be designated now. So it's been a very positive, well-received process. And so we wanted to highlight that and how this would build on that success. It also allows for collaboration with each property owner and recognition of each site's unique history. So I highlighted in the report how we're able to meet one-on-one with the property owners and kind of customize these bylaws with one person or two people rather than, I think we said 58 stakeholders. So it's a little bit easier to get in agreement than having the 58. And then the other, I think, big one and big value we saw was the unique history. And I wanted to highlight 88 Main Street East. It was highlighted as a contributing building in the district for being a fruit farm, but by individually designating it, which we recently did, and it's going to council for its final bylaw, we have homeowner support on that one. We ended up finding out that there was a huge tie to the British Home Children, and we ended up finding out that British Home Children, or someone who came through the British Home Children process, ended up marrying into the family, and then she ended up owning the house in the end. And it's a really important story we never would have known about if we hadn't gone through the individual process. So we think there'll be a great opportunity to learn more of those stories that weren't captured within the HCD. So it gives us a little bit more opportunity. I know that's been some of the feedback we heard from the homeowners, that their history specifically wasn't captured in the study, and so I think they had a hard time connecting to it. Where with the Unwin House and that history, the homeowners just loved it and they wanted to be a part of that story and share that legacy. So we think that is a great benefit of it as well. Another big one is it reduces the vulnerability to appeals, which could delay protections and leave properties at risk of demolition. And again, we're looking at that municipal heritage register coming up in January 1, 2027. So I touched on that in the report that Part 4, as soon as you start the designation process and issue the NOID, it's protected as if it was designated from demolition, where, and demolition permits are in general just void until that's done, where with district, it doesn't work that way. So if we say we get the plan in place and then we have 1 or 2 property owners that appeal, it'll derail the whole thing. And then we have to wait for our OLT hearing. So we'd wait for our OLT hearing date, and we don't know when that's going to be. Sometimes it can be upwards of 6 months. Then we still have to go through the hearing date, get our decision, and then we have to implement the district after that point. Where individual, it's protected the entire time. So that's one of the big benefits of individual, is you have the interim protection. I did reference in there that interim protections can be considered under the Ontario Heritage Act for districts, but they are appealable. So again, if someone appeals that, we're waiting for our OOT hearing to see if that is something that can be appealed or not, or if it's our use of it is defensible. And then we have enables the use of the extensive research completed in phase 1 of the study. So that'll serve the foundation of the report. So our idea is we'll take all of that research that was obtained through phase 1 and implement them in all of the base reports. And then we'll continue to build on the unique stories within them. So none of that research will go to waste. It'll all be used, and we'll use them to help build the defensibility of the designations. So we wanted to ensure that all of that would be used. And so staff recommend following all of that assessment, consultation. It's been a long process, a lot of implementation of tools. We've done a ton of work to address some of the concerns of the property owners since that initial recommendation in 2023. We've created all kinds of guides. We've done things for insurance. We have put together booklets to help property owners obtain affordable insurance now, giving them insurance companies to start with, a letter from our legal counsel stating their right to have affordable insurance. We've done our grant programs. We've now just put in the tax relief program, and these tools are being really well used by the community. So we've really taken all that time to make sure that we were in a good place to go forward with the protection of the corridor. And so based on all of that, we do recommend prioritizing individual designation within the Main Street East corridor as a part of the 25 to 26 designation program. And we're recommending that that area be protected alongside the downtown core within the next year. So those are going to be our main priority areas, just based on kind of the way intensification is likely to come into these historic areas. We think that these are more vulnerable areas, and along Main Street East, those are some of our biggest lots. And so this is something we think is really important. And then another benefit that I wanted to mention, I know I was concluding, but I just thought of another one to mention, was the difference between district and individual when it comes to like the details or like the unique nuances of the site. So if like our district plan is to collectively protect, the general character of the buildings, we're not going to capture the same way we would with individual. So, those like houses that still have like stained glass windows or a specific porch type, that can all be reflected in individual designations, where the district plan, in order to get owner concurrence amongst the 58 sites, you may end up having a watered down policies. And so we might not get the same level of protection on these sites. So there is a risk of losing important attributes if the district plan doesn't accurately represent them. And so, we even talked to some of the property owners who had more ornate buildings to say, like, would you consider individual? Would you consider district? And we had some of that that said, I would do both. Mm-hmm. So there's some owners who are just going to love this and just see so much value in it. And then there would be other ones that we're probably looking at more of the watered down policies. And then that's where the committee and council can look at a more watered down bylaw on a site-specific basis and think, is this what we want to see? So I think it gives us that flexibility that we need to work with the individual homeowners. So that's just some of our feedback based on all of the data we've obtained to this point and best practices and our experiences so far with individual. So thank you.
Thank you, Bianca, for sharing that report. And wow, like so much work that this has been started in 2021. And so just, I mean, again, just a job well done for getting it to this point and doing all of that research on, you know, the corridor itself. But then, like you say, like, you know, what came out of this study has been things like the grant program and the incentives and kind of working to really have those one-on-one consultations with homeowners that we might not have had any otherwise, right? And so I think some really valuable information and has come out of that. So I think that that's really great that we've been able to gather all of that information from the community, do all of that really great research, and now we can have a plan going forward. I do have a couple of questions, but I want to put it to the committee first to see if you have any questions or comments. Okay, my main question that I think the SWOT analysis might not have covered as fulsomely as I was hoping was the placemaking element that heritage conservation districts offer. And I don't know if this is the right place to do this, maybe similar to what we just did for Kerman, but I would love to see something that would come out of the study and move forward with this is some more placemaking, just placemaking projects or placemaking work being done. I think from everything that you've shared, I do think that Part 4 designation is the way to go for all of the reasons that you suggested or that you shared. You know, you're the experts. You're in the work. You know. So I definitely trust that. But I think the thing that was missing from the SWOT analysis was, as a strength for HCDs and opportunity for HCDs, is placemaking. You know, plaques, like signage, just more of that. So if there is a way that we could maybe recommend we explore what that could look like on Main Street East, that would make, I think that would really strengthen the Part 4s that do come, and also highlight the work that was done on the study, right? Because clearly this has a lot of heritage in a distinct corridor, and that should be celebrated. I'm not sure if you could speak to that.
Through the chair, yeah. So I think first thing I wanted to touch on was the SWOT analysis. There was like a little disclaimer at the top. I don't know if that part would captured it, but we said any of the benefits that wasn't shared, we didn't include in the chart because we didn't want to duplicate things that are like the same for both. But I know like traditionally districts are known for that placemaking. But something we are looking at in our official plan is placemaking. That's a big chunk of it. And so some of the rationale behind it was we can achieve that through policy. But we've talked about this a bit at the Niagara Heritage Planners Group, where there's so much area that needs to be protected, but there's nothing saying that we can't put a sign up in an area and make it look like a district and act like a district, but be individually designated. So I kind of think about like Nels Boulevard, for example. We know that that was related to the Nels Rutherford family, and that the last living descendant, she designed the houses with the property owners and the Schaefer brothers, and that is a collection kind of severed piece by piece, but it was designed to look good together. And so, you know, that could be an area where we do individual designation, but we can have a sign that says you're entering the Nels Rutherford district. Like, there's nothing saying we can't use that sign to say that. Or if we want to say you're coming through a historic district when it comes to Main Street, I don't think there's anything wrong with us putting, you know, gateway signing and things like that. Like, I think the important thing is the buildings are protected, and then we can have fun with the interpretation. Like, do we want to have plaques as people are walking down? telling the story of the Unwin family and the British home children. Like, these are amazing stories we're going to get to tell. And it's like, there's nothing stopping us from putting these plaques in the road allowance and things like that, that tell these amazing stories, or lampposts or benches, anything like that. Like, we can still make it look like a district. And so we're going to have official plan policies that encourage that in this area. That's something we talked about. But the committee at any time can say, you know what, we need a plaque here. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to have those gateways as you go into the area. I think individual still allows us to do that, and we can still achieve our goal, which is telling these stories and recognizing this important area. And I recognize how important like placemaking and everything is to you. So we definitely are grateful to have your feedback that way. So I don't know if there is a if that's something you want to add in now. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to still do that. But I will say that was something that the community was very big on. They love the idea of the placemaking. They love the idea of the benches, cohesive lamps, lampposts. They love the idea of like entering into a gateway. Those are all things that 100% I think we can still achieve. It's just typically paired with the district, but I think we're in a unique scenario where we're considering this. And I know like there was a couple other municipalities that are doing something similar, like we put the St. Catharines example in. That always is going to be a collective corridor of the downtown. Same with ours, right? Even though they're individually designated, those are still such important integral corridors. And I don't see anything wrong with us using the word district, even if it's not under Part 5. So I don't know if there is an opportunity to put it in there, but I wanted to share, like, the charts didn't have all the conflicts that they share. They didn't have all the benefits. It was just really looking at where are the things that are going to actually affect between the two options. And so we felt with placemaking that we could still achieve it, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Christianchi has your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just really appreciate the balance that you found. Because when I heard from homeowners on Main Street, they preferred individual designation as opposed to a district. And we all have the same goals. And I really appreciate that you have found that balance between, protecting and preserving our heritage, but also being able to move forward and being able to work with the heritage homeowners, and they have a say. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I can see is, we're listening and we're working with. And I think that's a big change in the last 3 years, and particularly, I think our committee really says, like, we want to work with you, and with the grants and with the tax, and saying, okay, we want to preserve Main Street, but your voice is important, and you're listening, and that shows with this report. So I appreciate that. I mean, I think we're hitting what everybody's goals are in a way that I think works for both the homeowners and the town and stuff like that. So. And I love the idea of adding the placemaking into the official plan and having those. I mean, we all want that feeling, right? And we can have it all, really. So I think I support the report.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Yeah, so I guess my other question was how this fits into the larger official plan, and it seems like you did answer that a bit. Does the committee think it's worth adding in here a recommendation about placemaking and kind of making that a priority, or should we just leave it to the official plan to do that work for us?
I don't think there's anything wrong with putting in that visual placemaking be a part of this strategy.
Yeah, I think I would.
Maybe I'll put that on the record.
Okay.
Through the chair, I just said, I don't think there's any harm in saying that placemaking be integrated into this strategy, and that we could say like, that this be explored in the future, because there's nothing stopping the committee from at any time saying, we need a plaque, like you did for Kerman tonight. We need a plaque there, as long as council says, yeah, then staff's been directed, we'll come back to you. So there's nothing saying that in the future you can't do it, but I think if our intention is to make sure that's known, because that was something that the property owners did express. Like, I think it was a pretty like impressive 82% of people felt this area deserved recognition and protection. And so I think that 82%, a lot of them were just so proud to be a part of the corridor. And I think too, like, because it's a main street, some of the things they talked about is like, you know, when they're walking the street, like their experience and things like that. And I think if you have gateways that enter, you're just naturally going to have people slowing down and looking at the houses. So I think it gives a community almost to that section, even though it's not a district, by having people slow down and slightly different, maybe lampposts or whatever it is that we do slightly different down there. I think people will naturally like slow down and enjoy the houses. So we want people to we want to acknowledge these are our assets, like they're beautiful. And so I think the placemaking is going to just make it even, it's going to enhance what we already have, right? So I think you can add that in for sure.
Okay, if the committee is supportive of that, I think I would like to add that in. And not to, go on and on about this, but I think what's also important about placemaking, what you're saying is like, those are the things that also bring people to spaces like that. And I think that's when you start to see more visitors drop by and they're buying a coffee and they're walking down those streets too, and they're kind of supporting the economic, business, like the businesses of the area too. So I do think we all benefit from this sort of work. So I just wanted to kind of state that also. You're really good at writing the recommendations and fixing them up. So if you don't mind, that would be very helpful. Okay, thank you to Bianca for adding this to the recommendation or the resolution here. So I'm going to read this out, and if we're good with it, then we can move forward. Resolved that report HR 2526 recommendation report Heritage Conservation District next steps dated October 27, 2025 be received, and that the committee recommends that council suspends the continuation of the Heritage Conservation District Phase 2, the plan, and that the committee recommends that the contributing properties identified within Phase 1, the study, be protected through individual designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that these resources form part of the 2025-2026 designation prioritization list along with the cultural resources within the downtown core, and that placemaking be integrated within the recommended strategy. Do I have a mover? Okay, we have Councillor Cristangi and a seconder. We have Brian. All in favor? All right, that's great, and that's carried. Okay, thank you very much. Wow, that's a big project. Wow. Okay, great. It's really exciting to kind of see a clear path forward. I'm excited for this to, see what's next. Okay, we do have a couple items under new business before we wrap up. I guess we'll give it to Garrett first to talk about tax incentives. I'm just kind of going through what's on my list first.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to update the committee that staff delegated to the Region of Niagara Corporate Services Committee on October 8th, asking them to consider passing a similar bylaw that was passed for our heritage tax rebate program. So Ideally, it would offer residential properties up to 40% off of their, I'll step back. Ours offers residential properties 40% off of their education and municipal portions of their taxes, and commercial properties 20%. We're asking the region to pass a similar bylaw that would allow us to reduce their portions of the property taxes as well. So there's a report going forward to the Budget Committee of the Whole on November 13th. We don't know the status of that report, but we'll update the committee after that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. That's exciting that we were able to be in front of the region, and I hope things move forward because of that. So thank you. I also have on my list an update about the November meeting. So I don't know if you remember, but Bianca sent around an email about dates for November, and we had quorum for November 20th, and it was super exciting. And then I guess we learned that there was tree lighting on that day. So I think we have to change it again. So Bianca, I'm not sure if you want to facilitate that.
Sure. So I have the dates still that I circulated. I know Brian, I know you're supposed to say member last name, but it's been a long night. Brian can't do anything but November 20th. And I haven't been able to get quorum for the other dates. So I was thinking we could potentially do, I was talking with clerks, and I can send you a follow-up email. There's like one December date before a special council meeting that we could take. That could be our emergency meeting. Just in case something comes up, we need to get it approved before the end of the year. We could do it that day. And then our later meeting in December, we could just have for like a Christmas, like if we wanted to like just hold it and we could do like a Christmas dinner or whatever. But we need something in there just in case a demo comes in. So I'm thinking that December date, let me look it up quickly. Yeah, so the special council meeting would be the 3rd, so it would be the 2nd, December 2nd. And that would just be like, we'll hold it in case something comes up, and then if we don't need it, we don't have to have it because we have something later in the month. How does that sound for you three? If you three can do it, we'll have quorum, but I don't know. No? Okay. Okay, let me float December 2nd, because I know Councillor DeFlavio can't do, there was one day he couldn't do that somebody else could do, so, oh no, he can do it. It's just he'd have to leave by 7:30. He was a Thursday, and most of these are Thursdays. So we would need one person just in case it went longer than 7:30. So I will float some more options to you, but just so you know, the 20th is a no-go, and then we'll try and get one more for December 2nd. Maybe Councillor DeFlavio or Amy can do that one. So I will follow up on you, but so far, Councillor Corstangi and Sarah, you're okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right. Okay, all right. So the other updates that we had, I just wanted to quickly say I had the pleasure of going to the National Trust Conference in Halifax this past weekend for my work. But when I was there, they were really excitingly announced a new heritage home insurance. So that's very exciting. It's through Marcia's Private Client Services. I have like a fancy little postcard here with the QR code. But this is really exciting for heritage homeowners because we know, as you were just saying through the Main Street East study, that this was a concern for heritage homeowners. And, part of, advocacy from the town of Grimsby and other municipalities across Canada went to the National Trust and said, hey, we need help with this. So they came up with some solutions, which is really great. So now we do have, through the National Trust and Marcia's Private Client Services, there is heritage home insurance available. So if anyone needs to look at that, we we now have options, which is exciting. Lastly, I did want to announce that our mapping project is we have maps. I'm not sure, like we have some maps here, and it's really exciting. And we are looking to launch this project for, again, if you remember, this is the Mapping Grimsby's Heritage project. It began over a year ago now, and we have maps that we can distribute across the town. So we're looking to launch this hopefully in the next little while, I guess. So definitely look out for that, and I'm hoping that our community can explore the really, really rich history that we have, built heritage that we have downtown. So that's a really exciting good news story, and I'm really happy for people to see it. And that's it for our updates, I think. Okay, so that's it. That adjourns our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for a really fruitful discussion tonight, and maybe we'll see you in November, December. We're not sure, but but sometime. So thank you very much.